perhaps I will touch on the NCMP issue, and then maybe Tong, you'll let you respond to the education issue. All right, for the NCMP issue, I think Yini, your question was whether after this election, depending on the outcome, the Workers' Party would accept any NCMP seats offered. Yeah, I will say that we are unable to say at this point in time, because we will have to look at what happens during the election and the election outcome. So I'm sorry I can't give you a definitive answer now, because it is a question that has many dimensions, and we will only be able to give the answer after the election is over.
Could you outline some of the considerations that you might take into account?
I can only maybe talk about the previous time, because I can't predict this time what will be the factors. I think the previous time the party did look at what happened during the 06 election, and we knew that even though in principle we have issues with the NCMP scheme, but we also understand the feeling of the ground, the desire to have a Workers' Party represent some of the constituents in our unit GRC at that time. And the fact that we would disappoint the voters then was one consideration.
Okay, with regards to the question on our education policy, it's like in broad strokes quite similar to the PAP. Actually, it's quite different. If you look into the details, it is different. For example, when we ask for the class size to be smaller, we want it to be in real terms. If you look at the MOE website, the class size now for primary school ratio of student to teaching staff is actually 19.6. But if you go down to the school, you don't get 19.6. We want the government to implement that. And even the secondary school, if you look at the ratio of student to teaching staff is quite a nice 16.4. Then you go up to primary 3, you got nieces, your daughters, or your cousins. Just ask them how big is your class. I asked my niece, is Sec 2 is like 43. And so we want action. We don't want statistics on the website that says we already reached the ratio. So on the other thing is like we also have proposed, like for example, Zakia, right? You were saying what's the difference? Some of the things we took out in our education, because like for 2006 we proposed a professional teacher association, and that's already implemented sometime I think 2 years ago. They started this Academy of Singapore Teacher to look after professionalism and well-being of teachers, which was what we proposed. So some of the things we have actually suggested. So they are different. So we hope that you can go through our manifesto thoroughly.
Well, certainly we, in our manifesto, we have also talked about the importance of on-the-job training, and that more government funding should be put into this area. Because we do agree that productivity is one way that wages can rise. So we feel that apart from, say, having training which takes the workers out of their workplace, if more emphasis can be put on-the-job training, which allows the worker to remain productive and therefore makes the employer less reluctant to release him for training, that could be something that would also be of some concrete advantage in that sense to low-wage workers. Actually, the 4 things flagged out the last time are still in the manifesto, actually, because our beliefs on those things have not changed. And I believe that those issues actually have been talked about quite a lot already in the past. Elected presidency, about safety nets, and so on. So we in that sense, we still believe, stand by our beliefs, and those things are still there. So I don't think we're going to bring up new arguments to argue against them, because those are our beliefs. Okay, I think on the one hand we should be happy that democracy thrives. I think the more people are interested in elections, we should welcome that. Of course, if you're looking at prospects for electoral success, then of course it makes the situation a little bit more complicated. But I think that fundamentally, if there is more participation in elections, I think it's a good sign.
Thank you for your question. Well, I'll just have to reiterate what Chairman said. At the end of the day, this is a democracy. We believe it's a democracy, and that means any party really can stand and contest elections. So three-corner, four-corner, ultimately it boils down to which party has a good platform which the voters can relate to. And as far as the Workers' Party are concerned, we put out a manifesto, a platform which we believe is in the interest of citizens. We can't do anything about three-corner, four-corner fights. We can speak to the parties in private, but when nobody's going to disclose what those discussions entail, I think that's just part and parcel of the democratic process. We just have to write the way we live with it.
Sorry, what's your question? How are we going to finance the 1%?
No, because just now you said that
The government expenditure is low for healthcare.
you say that maybe you should spend more compared to
We believe that it will have to rise, yeah.
Okay, so then how do you going to finance the increase?
The way that the government finances all its expenditures, there are several revenue options. In the national budget, every year you will have your revenue collections from various taxes. You will also have investment returns and so on. So we don't see this, in principle, to be any different. I mean, our concern, I think, also is whether there is under-consumption of health services. Maybe Peng, you'd like to elaborate?
Yeah, I think if you look at the budget every year, there's always numbers to move around. I mean, certain ministries tend to get more, certain ministries tend to get less. So I believe it still can be a balanced budget if you just want to juggle the numbers. So it's not that difficult to, let's say, if we want to finance an increase in our health expenditure.
It need not be a zero-sum game in that sense, because you see, we also have our government revenues that and various taxes that we see now are actually rising in terms of the amounts collected by the government. Secondly, also the investment returns, that's another area where the government has some flexibility. In fact, every year when the government sort of takes part of the investment returns into the budget, we don't really know how many percent that is, because that is actually not open information. So we believe that the government has several tools in its hands that it can use if it needs to find more money to fund expenditures. I don't think we are pursuing in that sense targets, but we are concerned that the 1% public expenditure is very low by international standards. And we have also seen firsthand people who have had to sell their flats to pay for healthcare bills and all that. So there must be something amiss, you see. And we feel that this is an important area of public policy to be looked at.
Just have to clarify that, lest we be accused of getting our numbers wrong, 1% is 1% of GDP, and that is based on the government expenditure on healthcare, not based on the entire expenditure. The government figures will put out 4% because that includes the expenditure by the recipients of the healthcare.
I think those are fair questions with regard to where are you going to take the money from, etc. If you remember the chapter on culture, arts, media, and so forth, I think one of the important proposals that the WP put across is for Freedom of Information Act, because a lot of this information we would love to have. You have that information, then you can come up with alternatives which are more micro, more specific. Right now, to some extent, it's a very broad brushed approach, very macro perspective. And I think I want to just write on your question to just reinforce the importance of a freedom of information regime. I think the public will benefit. I think the democratic process as a whole will benefit also. Thanks.